Hey everyone, it's Hamza. Welcome to the first episode of our .NET API Mastery series. In this video, we are starting from scratch and building a simple CRUD API using .NET 9. We will create an API that can handle creating, reading, updating, and deleting data. Perfect for beginners and solid foundation for any project. By the end of this video, you will have fully working API, and in future episodes, we'll keep improving it by adding new technologies, authentication, and performance optimization, and more. So, let's jump right into it and start coding. Okay, let's get started. So, I'm going to create a new solution. I'm going to give it a name of API Mastery. Okay. Let's do it like this. That's great. Okay, first of all, I'm going to create a solution folder. I'm going to give it a name of presentation. Okay. Okay, this project or this folder will have our API. Okay, so I'm going to create a new project. We need a web API. Okay, that's good. So I'm going to give it a name web API. That's good. Okay, here is our API. So what I'm going to do now is create a new project. It will be class library. I'm going to give it a name of application. Okay. So in the future, guys, I'm going to record a video about clean architecture. So now just follow the steps. Okay, so let's create this class library. Okay, this will have our validators, interface, options, extensions, and all this stuff. Okay, here is our application. So what I'm going to do is delete, because we don't need classes here. So now I'm going to create another class library. I'm going to name domain. This will have our models and enums and entities. Domain, sorry. Okay. So let's create it. Okay, so let's delete this class because also we don't need it. Okay, that's good. Okay, now I'm going to create a new class library. I'm going to give it a name of infrastructure. Okay, so infrastructure. We forgot to add T. Okay, that's good. Okay, now I'm going also to delete this class. Okay, so now our project structure is ready. So let's get started and see what we have got to do. Okay, in our series, we are going to work with product. So I'm going to use product as an example in this series. So first we need to create a model to hold the properties of that product. Okay, so I'm going to create a directory. I'm going to give it a name of models. And then I'm going to create a class. I'm going to give it a name product. Okay. So here we need to define the properties of that product. So first we need a primary key, which is the ID. So I'm going to create public. I'm going to use integer. I prefer GUID, but in this example I'm going to use integer. And ID, that's good. And also we need a name. Okay. So public string name, that's good. And also we need price. Okay. So that's good. I'm going to use decimal for price, string for name, and integer for ID. Okay, that's good. Okay, now we should define the connection string for the database. So I'm going to open API app settings.json. And here I'm going to define the connection strings. So connection strings. Okay, I'm going to give it a name default connection. So let's define the properties. So server, which means the server we're going to use. So I'm going to use local server. Okay. And we should give it a name. So database, database. For example, API mastery DB. Okay. And also we should set the trust connection to true. This means that we are going to use Windows authentication instead of the SQL Server authentication. Okay. And also we need to trust the server certificate. Okay, trust server certificate true. Okay, this means that we trust the server's SSL certificate, okay, which can be useful when working on development environment and this stuff. Okay, so that's great. Okay, now as we have our connection string set up in the app settings.json, we need to create a server in the infrastructure that serve a bridge between our application and the database using entity framework. Okay, so I'm going to create a folder or directory. I'm going to call it data, and then I'm going to create the class, which is going to be app db context. Okay, and now we need to download some packages. So let me, I can download it from here. Okay, so we need to download the entity framework. Okay, okay, that's good. So let's import it. Okay, so I want to create a constructor that allow us to configure the database connection when we register this class app_db_context in the program.cs. Okay, so what I'm going to do is public constructor app_db_context. Okay, that's good. And also here we need to create a table for the properties we have defined before, which is the models, okay, product. So I'm going to create public db set. We're going to use product, okay, product. That's good. I'm going to give it products, but here we need to define dependencies. Yes. So that's good. Also, we need to create on model creating class. Okay, now we need to protected override. It should return void. Okay, on model creating. Okay, that's good. So here base on model create. Okay, that's okay, that's good. So this we are going to use it later to define the database schema. Okay, so I guess that is so good now. Okay, now we are all good. We need to go to the program.cs to define our database. Okay, okay, first I'm going to builder.services.add add db context. Okay, we are going to add db context. Okay, and then we need to define options. Okay, and here we should put the connection string. So first I'm going to options.use SQL server. Okay, and here we should define the builder.configuration.get connection string. Okay, here we should give this the same name we defined before, which is default connection. Okay, make sure to do this. So that's good. And now we need to do something, which is if the connection string is not found, okay, we need to throw an exception. Okay, throw a new invalid cast exception or operation. Okay, invalid operation exception. So we should give it like, for example, connection string is null. Okay, that's good. Okay, we are all set, but we need to fix this error fast. Use SQL Server. Okay, because we don't have the package here. So I'm going to install SQL Server. Okay. I'm going to use version 9 and add it to the project. Okay, so that's great. Okay, now I'm going to create a migration. Let me close these files. So we need to open the terminal and write .NET EF migrations add initial create. Okay, let's try to run it. I think we missed some packages. I think we missed the design package. So let's see. Okay, we missed this one. So I'm going to install it. So design. Okay, let me just take it from here. Okay, I'm going to install version 9. Okay, let's try to run it again and see what we've got. Okay, here we got an error. Your target project web API doesn't match your migration assembly infrastructure. Okay, so here we can do something which can be useful. Okay, so here we can fix it by adding this line of code. Okay, SQL options. Migration assembly. Okay, so I'm going to type of, oh no, we don't need it, just pass the web API. So I think that should fix the problem. Okay, let's try to run it again. Okay, that's great. As you can see here, we've got the initial create migration. It has all the properties, the create table, okay, which is in the app class, and drop table in the down class. Okay, so that's good. Let's try to push the changes or update the database. So I'm going to .NET EF database update. Okay, that's great. Our database now is working as expected. Let's open the database and check if the properties are defined there. Okay, let's try to open the databases. Okay, that's great. Our database is created successfully. Let's try to see the tables. Okay, we have the products table. Okay, that's amazing. So we have the ID, which is the primary key, name, and price. Okay, so that's amazing. Okay, let's move to the next step and see what we're going to do. Okay, now we need to create the interface. So I'm going to create a directory. I'm going to give it a name of interfaces. Okay, and then I'm going to create an interface. Okay, I'm going to give it a name of iProduct repository. Okay, so here we need to define the methods we are going to use in this repo. Okay, so first we need to get the product by the ID. So task return product. Okay, and we should give it a name, get product by ID, for example, get product by ID sync, and we should pass the ID here. Okay, but we should give a reference to the domain. Okay, that's good. Also, we need to create a method for adding a new product. So task add products async, and we should here pass the product model. I prefer to use model here. Okay, so also we need to create another task for updating the product. So update product sync. Okay, Here also we need to create another task for deleting the product itself. So product, delete product async. We should pass the ID here. Okay, that's good. So let's move to the next step, which is going to create a repository directory in the infrastructure. So repository. Okay, and we need to create a repo. I'm going to give it a name of product repository. Okay, that's good. So now we need to inherit that method from the iProduct repository. So iProduct repository. Okay, we should put reference to the application. Okay, here we need to implement the missing members. So as you can see here, the first method, get product and add product, update product and delete product. That's good. Okay, now we need to get the product by its ID. Okay, first we declare a private read-only field, okay? Sorry, of the type app.db context. Okay, app.db context. Okay, I'm going to give it a name context. And also we need to create a constructor for that. Okay, so we create a constructor for the app.db context. But first let me put a preference to the, oh, sorry. Okay. So we use construction injection to inject the app.db context into our repo. So this follows a DI pattern, making our code maintainable and testable. So now every time we create an instance of the product repository, okay, it will receive an instance of the app.db context. Okay, so which can we use to query and modify the database. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to make our method asynchronous by using the async keyword. Okay, and now I'm going to return await. I'm going to access the database by context.products. Here I'm accessing the products table, and then I'm going to use a link method, find async. I'm going to pass the ID. Okay, so that's good. Let's move now to the next method and see what we're going to do. Okay, now I'm going to make the add product asynchronous by adding a sync keyword. Okay, and then I'm going to add the model to the database. So I'm going to access the database. So await context products the add async. Okay, and we should here pass the model. Okay, now we should save the changes. So I'm going to add context.save changes async. Okay, so here the method is ready. Let's move on to the next method. Okay, first I'm going to make this method asynchronous by adding this keyword, and then I'm going to get the product I'm going to update. So var product to update. Okay, we need to check if it's there or not. So I'm going to access the database context the products find async model ID. Okay, and now we need to check if the product ID is null. Okay, we need to return an exception. Okay, so I'm going to return new exception. Exactly. So now if it's not null, we need to map the new data. So product.update name, model name, that's good. And the price. So here we are updating the price and the name. Okay. So after that, we need to add these models to the database, or we can just save it because we already make the changes here. Okay. So here we just need to save the changes. Okay. That's good. Okay. Last but not least, we need to delete the product. So first I'm going to make it asynchronous. Okay. And here we need to get the product. So product await dot context, sorry, that context products dot find a sync. Okay, we are going to use again the link method. So here we should pass the ID. Okay, that's good. So here we need to, if the product is null, just return an exception that product is not null, is not found, sorry. Okay. After that, we need to access the context, the products, the remove, okay, the product we got before. Okay, that's good. After that, we need to save the changes. So I'm going to await context the save changes. Okay, that's good. In future, we can make this method return a boolean. Okay, so if the product deleted successfully, it will return true. If not, it will return false. But now I'm going to make it simple as possible to just move forward, and then I'm going to modify the APIs and repositories and endpoints. Okay, so let's move to the next step. Okay, before we move forward, best practices is to check the null or bad input in the controller. Okay, because repo or repositories is responsible for data operations. So it should not handle a validation like checking for null or bad input. So controller should handle the input validation because the controller is the entry point of the API. So it should validate the request before calling the repo or repository. So if null is passed, the controller should return a proper HTTP 400 bad request. So response instead of letting the exception occur. Okay, so now I'm going to create a controller in the API. So I'm going to controllers directory. Okay, I'm going to create a controller. I'm going to give it a name of product controller. Okay, products. Okay, that's great. So here we need to declare a private field of a product repo, so which will hold a reference to the product repository. Okay, so we have an access to the repositories method, so we can use it. Okay, so private read only iProduct method repository. Okay, oh, sorry. Okay, that's great. Okay, we need to import reference, and also we need to create a constructor. Okay, that's great. So let's start with the first controller. Okay, so first I'm going to add an HTTP GET attribute to define an endpoint that allow client to retrieve a product by its ID. So first I'm going to remove this, which is HTTP GET. Okay, that's great. So here we need to start the method. Okay, so what I'm going to do is public async task I action result. Okay, so that's good. And here we should give it a name, for example, get product by ID. Okay, and here we should pass the ID. Okay, that's great. Okay, here I'm going to do something. I'm going to pass the ID from the query. Okay, so from query. That's good. So now we need to validate the ID. So if the ID is less than 0, okay, or equal to 0, we should return we should return a 400 response. So return bad request and with the message invalid product ID. Okay, that's great. Okay, now we need to call the the repo. So I'm going to get await product repository to get product by ID. Okay, that's good. And here we need to give it the ID. Okay, that's great. So now we need to check if the product is null. Okay, return not found, for example. So if product is null, okay, we need to return not found. Okay, with a message, let's say product not found. Okay, that's good. If the product is found, we need to return okay with the product model. Okay, that's all. We can give it here and route. So I'm going to write, for example, get. Okay, or we can do it like this maybe. That's good. Okay, let's move to the next method or next endpoint. Okay, so now I'm going to create an endpoint for the add product method. Okay, so first I'm going to add an HTTP attribute, which is going to be HTTP post. Okay, sorry, HTTP post. And let's say, for example, create. Okay, that's good. So now we need to start the method. So public async task action result. So we are going to return an action result, create product. Okay. And here we need to define our model with product, and for example, model. Okay. That's good. But here we are going to do another thing, which is get the model from the body. Okay. From body. Okay. That's great. So first, we need to check if the model is null or not before we make a request for the repo. Okay, so I'm going to check if model is null. We are going to return a bad request, okay, with a message of invalid product model, for example. We are going to call the repo. We're going to await product repo, add product model. Okay, we're going to add the model here. That's awesome. Now we need to return okay, for example. Okay, that's great. Okay, so now I'm going to create an HTTP attribute. Okay, I'm going to use put and update. That's great. So now I'm going to start the method or the endpoint. So I'm going to public async. Okay, task. It should return also an action result. So action result should give it I here. Okay, and for example, update product. Okay, that's good. So here we're going to pass our model, product model, and here we're going to also to pass the model from the body. So from okay, sorry, from body. Okay, that's good. So now first we need to check if the model is null. Okay, if model is null, we are going to return a bad request. Return bad request with a message of invalid product model. Okay, that's good. If the model is not null, we need to update the model. Okay, so I'm going to await context. Await repo, and then we're going to update the product async. I'm going to pass the model. Okay, that's great. So also here we need to return. We can return here no content. Okay, because later we can return a product itself or the model itself. Okay, so first now we are going to return not content. Okay, that's great. So let's move to the next method or endpoint. Okay, now we need to add an endpoint for the delete. Okay, so I'm going to use an HTTP delete attribute. Okay, so HTTP delete. That's great. And you also give it a name, for example, delete. That would be great. So now we need to create public async, also return action result, and the name for delete product, for example. And we need to pass the ID. Okay. But here also we're going to pass it from the query. So from query, okay, that's great. So first we need to check if the ID is valid. So we're going to if ID is less or equal to 0. Okay, we need to return a bad request. So return bad request with a message of invalid product ID. Okay, that's great. Now we need to call the repo. So I'm going to product repo, delete product, and we are going to pass the ID. That's great. So here we need to return no content also, or we can just pass okay, and later in future we can pass a boolean. Okay, that's good. Okay, we forgot to add an important thing here, which is to define that this class is a controller. I'm going to add API controller, and I'm going to add the road and API controller. Okay, so this define that this class is an API controller. Okay, so before we move forward, we need to register the repo in the program.cs. Okay, so I'm going to write builder services add scope. Okay, and here we need to add the product repo, the interface, and the repo itself. Okay, that's great. So here I'm going to create add scope means I'm going to create a new instance of the product repo every HTTP request. So that means every new request, HTTP request, we will be creating a new instance of this interface. Okay. Okay, now we are all set. So I'm going to create a collection of requests in the Postman, and we are going to test it to see if our controls are working just as expected. Okay, so stay tuned. Okay, now let's move to the Postman and test our endpoints. So first I'm going to test the create product. Okay. Okay, and here I'm going to pass this JSON object from the body. So let's try to run it and see what we've got. Okay, that's great. We've got 200, which means it's okay. So let's try now to get the product by its ID. Okay, so we move here, and here we can pass the ID from the query. Okay, but here I did a small thing. Okay, I removed this. It was like this. Okay, I remove it because we don't need it. Okay, that's great. So let's try to pass the ID from the query. So I'm going to ID equal, for example, 3. Okay, let's send the request and see the results. Okay, that's great. We've got the JSON object that holds an ID and the name, okay, and the price. That's amazing. Okay, let's try to update it. So we move to here, we give it the ID 3, for example, and my product, okay, and price 10. Okay, great. We've got no content here. In future, we can make it return the JSON, the object. Okay, let's try to get this ID or this product. Okay. Okay, as you can see here, the name changed from product 1 to my product. Okay, that's great. Let's see the data in the database. Okay. So if you open product and try to edit top 100, you can see the first element, okay, of the first record is ID 3 and the name my product and price 10. Okay, that's good. Let's try now to remove the product and see what we have got. So here we are going to pass also the ID, which is 3, and let's try it. Okay, that's good. As you can see here, the request successful. Okay, so let's move to the database and try to refresh our table and see if it's removed. Okay, so edit to 1 to 100. Okay, as you can see, the table is empty. Okay, that means that we removed the product from the table. Okay, that's great. That's for today. So today we built an API step by step in .NET 9. So we cover controllers and dependency injection and also repo, okay, or repository patterns. So I hope this video was helpful. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a future tutorials. So drop a comment below if you have any question or suggestions for the next video. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one. Happy coding.